Hello, welcome back. So today I want to explore this concept of why is it so difficult to know what I want? You know, uh, you'll probably find out that if you're watching this, you're probably realizing it's rather difficult to know what it is you want. And what I like to say is that actually fundamentally it's because it lacks a balance, and kind of drew a yin yang symbol for this. It's really because it lacks balance. Whatever decision we're trying to do, we need balance. So typically, when we're trying to decide what we want, we try and have a black and white decision. We try and either just go for what we want without considering other people, or we try and be considerate, and we try to choose between other people and ourselves. That's never really going to work, because if you do that too many times, then at some point you're going to become resentful if you keep sacrificing, or at some point somebody's going to say, hey, why are you being so self-centered? And they're going to push back. And so if you really think about it, the answer is some balance. And I think nowadays a lot of people call it a win-win situation, and I think this is actually really well stated. Win-win is basically where you get satisfied and the other person is also satisfied. So there's a balance. You're not choosing. And what I find typically is that when we're trying to make decisions, we're trying to actually make drastic decisions between one thing or another. And of course, if that's the case, then you're in conflict, because both of those are your needs. Taking care of other people is a very significant need of ours. And at the same time, also, we can't ignore our own needs. And so how is it that we can say that just the things that would satisfy your needs is what you want, but then at the same time, a key part of our need, which is to take care of other people, is not what you want? They're both what you want. So that's actually where I want to say most fundamentally the issue is coming in, is that the decisions we're trying to make is out of balance. So fundamentally, if you think you don't know what you want, most likely it's not that you don't know what you want, you're trying to choose between the different things you want. And that makes it difficult, because they're both what you want. So first, balance. The thing that I like to recommend for that, the best thing you can do is actually to write things down. And so I like to say, make sure that you write down what you want. All of them. And I think this is difficult because, it seems like a simple thing, so we want to just think. I'd like to say, if you don't like writing, type. And if you don't like typing, then I'd like to say, talk into a voice memo or voice recorder, and you'll find that it really helps. Or talk to someone. You'll notice that when you talk to someone, you get some perspective on the reasons, because as you speak, it becomes clear in your mind. And there's several different reasons for that. I'd like to not go into that today. But the key thing is that write it down, because when you write it down, you get to see, okay, this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want. And then as it is all laid out, you get to see, oh, how can I come across something that would allow me to combine it all? And sometimes when you see it all laid out, or when at least you've heard it, it becomes clear to you as to what an option might be that might allow you to meet both needs. So that's actually the first thing I like to say, is that why is it so difficult? Because oftentimes you're trying to balance between your needs, someone else's needs, and actually a greater need, even environmental needs, financial needs. Like, there's a lot of different needs that you have, and you're trying to balance all of them. I like to say that probably a good gauge to look at in terms of why it's so difficult to know what you want is because whenever you're trying to make a decision, you need to actually look at all of your needs, as I've been saying. And I drew a diagram for Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because I think this is actually probably the easiest way to show this, which is you have physical needs, you have security needs, then you have belonging needs, then you have esteem needs, then you have self-actualization needs, and you have self-transcendent needs. And so, if I say this simply, physical needs would be like related to health. Are you hungry? Are you not hungry? Is your body in pain? Is it not in pain? is your body functioning? So those are physical needs. Security needs are the things that we need in order to sustain our body. And so those are like the jobs, it's a routine, or money, food, regularity, actually I would say. So it's actually how you can securely take care of your body. And then belonging needs are how can you securely take care of your emotions in terms of your relations. And esteem needs are how can you feel good about yourself in terms of your in your role in your society, and your ability to succeed. How far can you push yourself? And so it's called esteem because you get to know your limitations and you get to know how far you can go. And then self-actualization needs are related to your purpose, and those are oftentimes what we call our needs. Those are the things that we like to do, and these are the kind of things that's like deeply fulfilling to your soul. Now, self-transcendent needs are the kind of service that's actually for other people, or things that allow us to look at a greater beyond. And that's actually why one of the reasons it's so important for us to serve other people, because we get a sense of a greater, that we belong to something greater than ourselves. So as you can see, whatever decision you make, when you get a job, is it going to be physically harming you? Are you going to be getting enough money? Are you going to get along with the people that you work, and are you going to be esteemed, meaning as in are you going to be respected for what you do, and will you feel like it's aligned with your purpose, and do you feel like you will be serving the greater world? And if any one of them is missing, you're going to be feeling like, it's not quite it, right? And so you're trying to balance all these different things. And so what I like to say is that you need to really kind of list them all out. As you list them all out, and if you write them all out, and you kind of look at your options, you can see what comes closest to meeting all of your needs. So this is kind of the foundation. So what I like to say is that typically we lack balance. We're trying to choose between things that are impossible. And the other thing is that we don't do something very simple, which is we write down all the conflicting needs or all the conflicting wants. And once you see how they're conflicting, oftentimes you can see a solution. And sometimes how much money you can make and whether it's in line with your purpose or not, they're conflicting. Sometimes like the thing that we feel like oftentimes would satisfy our soul, oftentimes it's not uncommon for that to make less money. And so if that's the case, then what do you choose? And people will just say, oh, you should, go for your purpose. And that's actually not necessarily the answer. It actually depends on, does the job that you are getting meet the minimum where it can at least pay for all your expenses? Because if it doesn't, I actually will recommend that you make sure that you're fundamentally responsible to your society and you choose a job that will pay all of your expenses. Because if not, then you will be compromising yourself and you will not be able to fully pursue your purpose. So as you can see, these are conflicting needs. And I feel like oftentimes people don't look at all these things and they don't take a balanced approach, and because of that, they're not able to really go for what they want. That's why people find it so confusing to figure out what they want. Now, so having said that, now that's kind of like the foundation. Now, however, from a more deeper perspective, where do we typically get hung up? And so if this is kind of like the overall principle, why is it so difficult to figure out what we want? And I like to say it's actually primarily because of how we've been educated. And it's kind of interesting because nowadays we're told we need to go for our dreams, we need to go for our purpose. But then at the same time we're told, don't make any mistakes. Make sure that you have all the information. Make sure that when you do things that you do it right. And so it's kind of like the standard is really high. You can't actually make mistakes, but yet at the same time you're supposed to be going for your dreams. And what I find really interesting is that going for your dreams actually oftentimes is about exploration. And exploration inherently entails getting results that you don't want, like mistakes. And so I want to kind of just talk about some of the things that typically gets in the way, the obstacles nowadays that gets in the way of figuring out what we want. And so I want to just kind of show some paradigms as to typically what gets in the way. And so the first thing I'd like to say is that, the view, like, what kind of filter do we look through the world with? Like, what are we filtering for? And I like to say that oftentimes we try and choose between what we want versus what we, versus what we fear. Meaning, as in, are we trying to make a decision from a place of abundance, or are we trying to make a choice from a place of fear? And a choice from a place of fear is actually, it's not as clear as what people think it is, because fear-based decisions are really oftentimes good decisions. Like, fear-based decisions are, does the job make enough money? Am I making enough money? This job makes a lot of money. This has got really good benefits. So if you're getting fear, fear is about consequences. So the question is, are you getting the consequences you want, and are you avoiding the consequences you don't want? That's a really good thing to think about. That's not a bad thing, but it's a measurable thing, and so therefore, it's easy to track. And because we are in a science-driven society, we kind of go for things that can be measurable. This has really good benefits. If I don't get this, then I may be missing out, or I may be putting myself in harm's way. Now, what we want oftentimes is also important. It's very important because it has to do with our needs, our innate needs. And they're oftentimes less quantifiable because they have to do with quality. And so what we want, it's kind of interesting. If you really think about what we want, it has to do with abundance. But abundance has to do with quality of life. And then consequences oftentimes has to do with quantity, right? So there are different kind of measurables. And so if I got this, or if I were to take this job, I feel like I'd feel really fulfilled. Now that's a lot less measurable, more difficult to measure. And I think I'd really look forward to going into work. And so those are the different things. Now what we are taught is that we should go for this, and then at the same time we should go for this, and this is the standard. Practically, however, we learn to do this. We don't actually learn how to do this safely, and we're just told that we should go after this. So we have a goal that's this, but we have a method that takes us here. So this is really interesting if you think about it. So we traditionally we call this a path, which is a method. So we have a method that takes us towards better consequences, but our goal takes us, which is all called what we call the view, but it's just called the view. It's what are you filtering for? The view, the goal that we have is towards want, towards quality, and so you get conflicting results. So you make choices that get you better consequences, but then you end up feeling really empty. And this is kind of like an interesting phenomenon, because we have a goal of being happy and fulfilled, yet we get results that just give us better consequences, which oftentimes doesn't leave us fulfilled. So this is actually kind of one of the obstacles that I see. Now that takes us to skill. What kind of skill do we have? Do we have the skill to discern what I want? And so, I didn't actually say this, but like view is like, what context am I looking for? Like, what am I filtering for? Meaning as in, and oftentimes, even though we're told that our goals should be what we want, what we actually are taught to filter for are what has better consequences, right? And they're not the same. And so in skill, like, do I have the skill to discern what I want? And this is kind of interesting. It's like basically skill means like the approach to life. Like, what skills do I have? Now, what I'd say is that we have performance versus results. And when we go to school, we learn how to perform. And what that means is that we get information. And then we're tested on the info. So we're actually, we execute on this information. And then it's really interesting because then we get corrected. So we're not the standard. We get corrected on the information. Are we getting this right or wrong? So this is actually where right performance is about right and wrong, because you're performing for someone. And then you repeat this process. until you get it correct. And then once you get it correct, then you pass. And you pass. Well, this is very interesting. So this is actually how we learn. So basically, we have to go to the experts, and the experts will correct us. And when you execute, when you get stuck, we learn how to not explore. Oftentimes what we actually learn is just to actually kind of seek the right information and seek the expert opinion. And there's a place for that. It's actually not a bad thing. It's actually good. And if you're in a job that has dire consequences where if you make a mistake, that's not a good thing, you definitely want that. Now, results-focused learning or results-focused approach is where you have a basically an idea or self-direction. I would say actually you have a desire, and that can come from many different things. You have a desire. It can come from ideas. It can come from information. It can come, but you fundamentally you have a desire. So you have an input, and then you have a desire, and then you do execute, and then you observe results. And then you form new strategy from the results and execute again. And then repeat until basically desired results. Now this gets you a very interesting thing, because the one who determines whether the results, the desired results or not, is basically the individual. So you start with the desire, and then when you get there, you know, because essentially, it's the standard is actually your desire. So this is very interesting because this is all about exploration, and then this is all about actually performance. And here, the only thing that you're looking for is results. Am I getting the results that I'm looking for or not? And because you're looking for results, ironically, you become really explorative, because you basically execute, and then you observe, and then you form a new strategy, and then you execute, you observe, and then you basically form a new strategy, and so on and so forth. And then it just keeps repeating until you get the results you want. Now, the interesting thing is that you need both. So let's say, for instance, you're actually, you get an idea, you're executing, you observe results, and then you're trying things, but then if you get new information, then you can try that as well. Or you can go to an expert and ask while you're trying. And so really, actually, you get the best results if you mix these two. And if you have, let's say, for instance, a customer, and they want a certain result, they do need to be the standard. So even though you're following what you fundamentally believe to be the results that is acceptable, you do need to meet your client's or the other person's request. And so you do need to be able to do both and take feedback. And so what I see oftentimes is, however, nowadays there's a very strong preference towards this because of the way we learn. And when it comes to your own life, you need to actually look at what desire you have, and then you need to look at what results you're getting for. But what I see oftentimes is when people have desire, they go to info, and then they wait on the expert to tell them whether they're getting it right or not. But the expert can't tell you. They can actually just tell you what the standard is of a certain, of how to get certain results that they're providing. So the standard is actually theirs, not yours. And it's a big hit and miss. And so when it comes to our own life, oftentimes we really lack the experience and the skill to be able to explore, because what you want is all about actually exploring to see whether you can actually get further and further, even more of what you want. And you're the only person who can know that, because it's your desires, it's your needs, and so on and so forth. And so this small little difference oftentimes all of a sudden make someone else who is outside of you the expert, and deters you away from what you want. So now that takes us to capacity. And this is an interesting thing, because most people don't look at capacity when it comes to want, but the simple question is, Do I have the capacity to feel what I want? Because what you want is a feeling. Now, most of the time we don't actually really think about that, but if you really thought about this, what you want is a need. It's a feeling. It's a feeling that you want to have. If you're hungry, then you want to eat, then that's a feeling. And then after you eat, whether you have the food that you want or not is a feeling. Whether you want a house and what kind of house you want is a feeling. And so on and so forth. These are all feelings. So your dream, you have a dream because it gives you a certain feeling. And so really what you're looking for, what you want fundamentally is a feeling. And oftentimes we miss that. We don't understand that it's a feeling that we want. It's really, now, of course what we want is a feeling, that's the ultimate goal, but of course there's a strategy that comes with it. Now, oftentimes, but this is priority number one. And this is priority number two because the strategy can change to get you the same feeling. But the feeling is what you want. And sometimes, even if you have a good strategy and you achieve the strategy, sometimes you don't get the feeling you want. So, originally when I first started this, I had no idea that this is what I would love doing. Like, this is the kind of thing that inspires me to teach and to help people and things like that. Originally, my strategy was to become an engineer and actually have a really good job and you just go down that path in the corporate world. And I thought that would give me the feeling I'm looking for, and it didn't. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing today what I'm doing, because I realized that strategy wasn't effective. I had to keep changing the strategy. So this is typically what you change. But oftentimes we get vested in this. Say for instance, a lot of times people want a bigger house, and then once they get the bigger house, they realize how much work it is. And they realize that what they were really looking for was this big sense of family. And so because of that, they get a big house to kind of express that. And then they actually end up with less family and more work. So again, feeling versus strategy, right? But capacity, so basically capacity is about the ability to feel, in this particular case, when it comes to want. And oftentimes, there are two strategies to actually reach what you want. You can become either more sensitive, so even with the smallest input, you can actually get what you want, or you can look for a more stimulating experience that really excites you, and therefore you can tell that you're getting what you want. So if you're going for stimulating, it has to be big. Whatever it is, it has to be big. So big house, big dream, big everything. The sensual can be small. So it's a lot more available. And what's really interesting is that when I help people actually achieve the kind of life they want, they don't realize oftentimes that they can start having the life that they want now, today. And the reason is because people are going for really big goals. Big goals that if you were to really actually go after it would take years, maybe 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years to achieve. People want to create centers. People want to create, travel, have a job where they're traveling around the world, or achieve, become number one, or to be the best at. And those are big goals, and they're a lot harder to achieve. And is it possible to achieve them? Absolutely. But I think what happens oftentimes is that we're so miserable on the path there, instead of actually being able to be happy while being on that path. And I believe fundamentally that, actually I'd like to say, I'm gonna scratch the word believe because I'm realizing that sounds hypothetical. My experience is that you can have the life you want today. And we just have to change the focus. And the example that I'd like to give is meditation. It's one of the reasons why meditation is becoming so popular. If you're used to only eating stimulating food, this food has to become more and more stimulating to give you a bigger bang for the buck. But then once you start eating bland food, the beginning is terrible because it seems like the food doesn't taste like anything. But the more you eat, bland food, the more you actually taste the ingredients and everything starts tasting good. And that's actually the effect that meditation has. You calm yourself down and you calm your mind down, so you start noticing things you didn't notice before. You start feeling things you didn't feel before, and you start actually having a more subtle feel for what you want. And most of the time, because people are looking so big for something so big, and they're actually filtered for that, that they're not looking for the small things that could satisfy them. It feels like it would never satisfy them. How can the small thing satisfy me? It can actually. It can satisfy you in a big way. I'll give you an example. One of the actual things that I've talk about often with people is actually styling. And it's really interesting because people go and buy lots of clothes to be more stylish. But oftentimes people get things that they don't really want. They actually get things that are good enough. Like, oh, this is kind of cool. But it doesn't like just fully bring them joy. They don't actually, and oftentimes the things that would really bring them joy actually cost a bit more. So what I tell them is actually, why don't you buy less, save that same money, and use the same money to just buy one item that you're really satisfied with. And actually, I use this principle across the board. Quality, go for quality. Don't go for quantity. And the small change actually increases the quality. You don't need to spend more money. Actually, you end up spending less money oftentimes, because what you'll notice is that it's better to have one satisfying thing that you love using than to have a lot of things that you actually really don't use. You don't actually have enough space. So this actually kind of goes into the concept of nowadays, I think, what people call minimalism, where you let go of everything else that you don't really want, and you just keep the things that you want. And that's actually is a really good strategy. We call this less is more. And more is less. And we, because of the concept of balance in terms of what we studied, we always repeat the same thing. Less is more is less. And it's true. If you actually go for something that you really want, you buy less of it. But whatever you bought that cost more actually results in less things that you have to keep, right? And so it's kind of like the way you think about things. And so the capacity, so because we go for more capacity, we actually oftentimes don't think about sensitizing ourselves, which is kind of like almost less capacity. So we go for more and more capacity, more power, more like a bigger size engine, more fuel, more, and that's not bad. I'm not saying that's bad, but I feel like it's, again, lacking balance. And it's because big things are more difficult to achieve, and so all of a sudden we end up where we're going for big things, and we go for performance, and then we go for fear. So look at what actually happens. This is actually, to me, like a really interesting phenomenon, and this is why I feel like we're so dissatisfied nowadays. This is how our choices are, how we try and prioritize our choices. We go for big stimulation, and we go for consequences, and then we go for performance, which means that you will try and make no mistakes. This is a difficult thing to achieve. This is a difficult thing to achieve. This is a difficult thing to achieve. If you're performing for someone else, then you typically wait until you get the right information, so nothing happens while that's happening. When you're looking for better consequences, if there's something you want, and it's actually something you could, but you think it might be a bad idea, it's like, is this okay? The moment you start thinking, then it stops you, because you're trying to figure out the best consequence. So it will stop you. And then if you go for big consequences, big stimulation, then there are not as many options available. So again, you have to wait. So wait, ends up with nothing. And so you have this life where it seems like you're living it, but you're not living it. So this is actually kind of the most common obstacles as to what prevents us from being able to have what we want in this moment. And so if I were to summarize, the way we get what we want is actually very simple. You take a balanced approach. Oftentimes people call this a win-win, but the way you take a balanced approach, I like to say, is that you write down all your conflicting needs. and you kind of look at what all your needs are, and then you look for the best option within that. And it's actually pretty simple. The key thing is that you either write it down or you verbalize it, or you do something that externalizes it so it's clear for you to look at. So that's how you look for what you want, and that will allow you to navigate around the conflicting needs or the difficult complexity of all the different needs that you have. So, but then that's a summary for how you figure out what you want. But then what are the typical obstacles? Well, instead of looking for what we want, we typically look at what the consequences are, because that's what we've been taught. And instead of actually exploring things, we actually look for how to perform, because that's what we've been taught, which is an impossible thing to do, because you have to explore your needs for you to really figure out what you want. And then you have to kind of actually look at what kind of quality you want instead of consequences. I mean, you have to look at them both, right? I mean, as I said, I mean, you have to do both here. And so again, balanced approach. But we've been taught to just do one or the other. And then in terms of capacity, we look for big stimulation instead of actually looking for the simple things that would actually really satisfy us right now and today. And so this lack of balance, this that we have learned towards a higher and higher standard to become the best, actually leaves us empty. Best for whom? Best towards what? I think it's almost like we're in an arms race towards becoming a superhuman being, and somehow you're missed somewhere in that picture. And so what I like to say is they claim your life today by actually going for the small things that really satisfy you, and looking at the kind of quality you want in life, and then actually learning how to explore more, to try, are these things working for me? And between that, I like to say, you will actually get the feeling you're looking for, because you keep changing the strategy to get the feeling that you're looking for. And you'll notice that you can do really a lot of small things to feel fully fulfilled. So now, hopefully this information will help you build the life that you want, and get the full sense of completeness that you're looking for. Thank you.